Michael Woodhouse.
Speaker, in my short call I just want to commend not only the many thousands of staff and volunteers who are working in Christchurch and the surrounding areas, but also those many thousands of people who have opened their hearts and their homes right around the South Island, and in particular my own city of Dunedin, who have adopted a rather novel approach to support by opening at the Dunedin railway station the Christchurch Embassy, probably the first embassy for a city anywhere that I can think of, but it's a terrific initiative which has brought together organisations like the Citizens Advice Bureau, St John. Well, there you go. It's pinched off the backbencher, always pioneers. But it's also given us, I think, a quite unique insight for those of us who weren't in Christchurch on the 22nd of February and who simply cannot imagine what life has been like since then. A small insight into the trauma that has been created by those who have been effectively displaced and who are now being accommodated in our schools and our homes and in our workplaces. And I want to commend the work that they are doing. The Octagon saw around 10,000 or so people stop for 2 minutes, and I think last week, and if that's a measure of what the memorial is going to be like, then North Hagley Park is going to be a quite special place next Friday. I don't agree with the member Marion Street that this is too early. I think this is a necessary catharsis, and I certainly support it.
Darian Fenton.
Well, Mr Speaker, I don't want to change the tone of the debate at all, because I think the contributions have been very genuine and heartfelt, and it's been very moving to hear the contributions from all sides of the House, and particularly the stories that have been told by people like my colleague Marion Street, who was actually there when the earthquake happened. And for someone like me who is absolutely petrified of earthquakes, and I'm like Leanne Dazelle, who said after the September earthquake that she always thought it would, the place to be frightened was Wellington, and of course that's not the case. I come from a place in the country in Auckland where we don't think we have earthquakes, but apparently we do. Someone showed me a little gadget yesterday that records, I think it's Chris Hipkins, he's got us on his iPhone, and it records every earthquake in the country. And there are masses of them, Mr Speaker, masses of them, all over the country. And it's actually amazing to see, because I live in Auckland, as I said, and think I'm safe, apart from the volcanoes, of course, which, that's another matter. But anyway, as I say, I want to commend all of the speakers for their very, very moving contributions, and repeat my sympathy for all of those in Christchurch who are suffering either because of loss of life, loss of home, loss of jobs and so on. I wanted, just in case we don't get to have a very long debate in the committee stages, to just turn to the bill in the second reading speech, if I may, Mr Speaker. It is a pretty straightforward bill, and I think the Minister and the Department have done a good job. They've done a pretty, it's a pretty simple approach. It provides for a one-off public holiday in the Canterbury region to commemorate the Christchurch earthquake, which will be a commemoration at Hagley Park on the 18th of March. That's next Friday. But just for information, because I'm not sure that the information, I've already had quite a few texts and calls and emails, and I know my colleagues in Christchurch are getting these too, about what it actually means, what it means for workers, what it means for business. And it is actually a day that's going to be treated like any other public holiday, like any other public holiday, except it only applies to Canterbury, which means that employees can be required to work if their agreement says that they can be required to work. If an employee works on all or part of the day, they must be paid time and a half, and they're entitled to an alternative day off. And at the moment, that alternative day off has to be agreed after the 1st of April. If it can't be agreed, the employer can decide when that day will be. So, and of course there's the reference to the Education Act, which means that the schools are closed for the day as well. Now, I wanted to mention some of the issues that are coming up. And I know that the Minister mentioned them in her first reading speech, that businesses are expressing some concern about this. I was just talking to my colleague Leanne Dalzell in Bexley, and she's expressed concern, as indeed have other members in Christchurch, because some shops in Bexley, where she works, have just opened today. For the first time, it's the first time they've been able to get into the premises, and they're really concerned about having to provide for time and a half or a day off next Friday. I know that other employers are complaining about having to fund a public holiday. It's not that they're against it, it's just some of them are so much on the margins that they're thinking that they're saying that it could tip them over. I think there's a whole lot of other issues as well. I think somebody earlier in the discussion referred to the workers that have been transferred into Christchurch to help out and who've now been transferred out. And will they be entitled to a public holiday? People that are living in Timaru, for example, and working there. People who've been transferred to other parts of the country for their employer who has other places in New Zealand where they can work. There's issues and there will be questions about those that I think will need to be addressed. And of course there's some real difficulties for others, other questions that are coming up. Businesses are saying, well, are they supposed to close? And I think, Minister, perhaps that needs to be made clear because it's Commemoration Day. Some businesses don't understand that they don't have to close. What they have to do is let their staff off on pay or pay them time and a half. But, because it's a Commemoration Day, it feels like something like Anzac Day where there's no trading, but there is under this bill, so I think that needs to be made clear. And another question that's come up is, what if their staff only want to go to the commemoration and don't want to take the day off? So what are they entitled to? How does that work? And I think a very practical question too that came once again from Leanne Dalzell, who's dealing with in Bexley with people, constituents who still don't have access to portaloos or chemical toilets. And she's saying, well, if thousands of people pour into Hagley Park, where are the portaloos going to come from? And that's I'm not being facetious here, it's a very practical question that I think needs to be given some consideration. And that's why many on our side are saying it's just too soon. We're not sure that these practical considerations have been thought through. Then we have all of the workers who, of course, don't have jobs. And I mentioned in my last speech that there's been millions of dollars paid out to employers and to cover staff and individual employees. But there are another category of employees who can't even get to their jobs because of their personal situation. For example, they have no toilets or shower, no transport, their children are off school. And the employer is saying their job's available, and because the job's available, they're not entitled to any subsidy. So those people are at home without any income. And then there's a whole category of other workers who are in no man's land where their workplace is still up and running, but orders have reduced by 80%. So the laying off of staff has begun, but they're not entitled to any situation. What's that? Yeah. Okay. So, and there's also some other stories as well that I think will need some answers. The other thing I would like to raise, Minister, maybe not be the time. It's not related so much to the bill, but there are workers who are employed by multinational companies or national companies who I understand are not eligible for the cover, for the earthquake cover. So that's hundreds of cleaners in the CBD, for example, who are getting no support at all at the moment. So there are some issues there, but as we've said all along, we support this bill. We support the people of Christchurch. We will join in the coming together for the grieving that will take place next Friday.
Nikki Kay.